Hey guys, what's going on? This is Andrew here today, and today we're going to be continuing the series that I like to call My History with Gaming. Today, we're going to be talking about Sega, but not just the consoles, but the company as a whole. As a 5-year-old in 2006, I knew of Sega because I had Sonic the Hedgehog on the GBA as one of my first games. At this time, and for many years, I knew that Sega was a company, but I had no idea that Sega had ever been a console manufacturer because I knew absolutely no one with a Sega console. Back to the Sonic topic, I remember playing the game quite frequently, but I never made it past Marble Zone back then, even with you being allowed to save your progress in the GBA version. I was never really good at the games that I had, such as SpongeBob the movie, Pokemon Emerald, or Sonic, but I found myself spending a lot of time playing them for fun, rather than playing them for completion. About a year later in 2008, when I had my DS and GameCube, only about a month after the holiday season in 2007, I was introduced to a few new Sonic games thanks to my cousin, and those were Sonic Rush, Sonic Rush Adventure, Sonic Adventure DX, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and Sonic Heroes. Quite a few games I believe are probably better than anything that came out afterwards. When it came to Sonic Rush, I really wasn't a fan at all, but when it came to Sonic Rush Adventure, I was instantly hooked. I always liked the concept of the game because it was a pretty unique type of concept of combining 2D and 3D elements into Sonic, plus the boss fights were fun and challenging, and I always thought that it was cool that they combined the stage design into 2 screens instead of 1. To this day, I've never actually beaten the game, but I do remember watching my cousin do it himself. One of these days, I would love to complete it. As for the Sonic Adventure games, I actually didn't catch on to these games until I played quite a bit of Sonic Heroes. I remember loving the 3D Sonic type games, and Sonic Heroes was my introduction into that. I thought it was pretty cool that you can shift between 3 different characters, but just like many games I had during that time, I never got to finish it. Recently though, I did buy a copy for the PS2 to one day finally complete it. Now let's get into the Sonic Adventure games. When it comes to those, they're both my favorite 3D Sonic games of all time. I never finished DX, although I'm working towards it nowadays, but I did actually end up completing Sonic Adventure 2 as my first Sonic game ever completed. I was a huge fan of the open world aspect of Sonic Adventure 1, and I would find myself just venturing around all of the areas, but what's funny is I mainly found myself playing pinball in the casino. Another big feature that I loved growing up was Chow Garden, but I found myself playing this mode much more in Sonic Adventure 2. I don't exactly know what brought me to play this so much, but I still catch myself going into it once in a while during my playthroughs every once in a while when I decide to jump back on that game for no reason. An honorable mention to bring up has to be Super Monkey Ball for the GameCube. Although I barely remember any of the gameplay elements since I was so young when playing the game, I do remember sitting down for hours to play this game, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. My next topic still involves the GameCube, and this brings me to the 3rd grade, which was 2010. At this point, I've been going through a major Pokemon phase, but I was still a fan of many Sonic games too. I had a friend named Michael who had similar interests in this area to me, and the big game that we had in common was Shadow the Hedgehog. I remember actually actively playing this game for a long time at that age, and despite it being extremely easy to me nowadays, it was a major challenge for me back then. I believe it took me about 3 months to actually make it to one of the endings of the game, where nowadays it would take me about 2 hours to get 2 different endings out of the way. Anyway, I remember going over to my friend Michael's house and grinding the game with him at one point, and we actually made it to one of the Eggman bosses, but we both failed to beat it. After leaving that day, I made it to the exact same boss in the game as he was, and I beat it after a few tries at my house. After doing that, I called to tell him what just happened, and it turned out that he was just getting ready to call me because he just did the exact same thing. Now that I've gone off on a tangent, I'm going to talk about what made me enjoy this game quite a lot and why I still enjoy it today. I really love the level design, graphics, storyline, and unlike many Sonic fans, I actually like the ability to use weapons, ride certain vehicles, and ride certain creatures. Although I feel that we didn't need all the endings, I do feel like it was pretty cool to see how things would have been if we took alternative paths than what the canon ending was. After the 3rd grade, I really didn't play anything Sega anymore other than maybe Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games or occasionally playing Sonic and Smash. This pretty much lasted all the way until I was 14 in 2015. This also brings me into how I started collecting consoles and retro games. I had just gotten back from Splish Splash, a huge water park in New York, and on the way back, my friend's mom saw that a new game store in our town had just opened. I had seen this place all the time passing by, and I just thought that it was another GameStop since I didn't look into it at all. We decided to take a look, and as soon as I saw a PS2 in the window, I immediately knew that this was a retro game store. This wasn't my first time in a retro game store because, as mentioned in my last video, I had gone to one further out to get myself a PS2, and before that I had turned in some of my games and consoles. Walking into this retro game store called Game On, it was pretty small, but they did a great job at working with what they had. I had been greeted by the owners as well as some of the employees, and I decided to take a look around. There were two major consoles that caught my eye, and those were the Nintendo 64 and a console that I had never seen in person before, the Sega Genesis. As I said before, I hadn't even heard of the Sega Genesis for most of my childhood, and not long before I went to the store, I had only figured out that one existed when scrolling through an emulator website. I asked the owner about the two consoles, and he basically said that it was a tough decision picking between the two. I didn't buy anything that day, and neither did my friend. The next day, I posted a video to one of my social media pages and asked my friends and followers about which console I should hop on, and to my surprise, more people told me to go for the Genesis over the Nintendo 64, which actually very surprising because a lot of people that I know prefer the N64 as like their favorite console. So, the next day, I walked back into the store, and I bought the Genesis with Sonic 2, Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat 2. After this day, I did a lot of research on Sega and retro gaming in general, and I learned about all of the platforms that they released, as well as what the competition was like between all of the platforms. Between all of the consoles, this right here started my interest in collecting, and I started collecting many more systems as time went on. For the next few years, I got extremely into the Genesis, and I was the only one out of all my friends that loved it as much as I did. A majority of my friends that I made over time weren't really into Sega, and Nintendo was their big platform. My favorite games had to be Revenge of Shinobi, Golden Axe, the Sonic Trilogy, Altered Beast, and Mortal Kombat at this time. I would find myself playing the Genesis so much that I was actually starting to complete these harder games, and because of that, many other games were becoming easy to me on other platforms, such as like the more recent platforms. Skip about a year, and Game On had a new location for quite some time now. This time, it was much bigger, and it was slightly closer to where I lived. Sometime after that, it was the summer of 2016, and Game On was looking to donate to charity. This group of kids and their parents were doing a lemonade stand to help them, and I only had cash, so I gave them a $5 bill, and they gave me about 7 or 8 cups of lemonade, which made me almost throw up because I just had so much lemonade. So I decided to sit down at a bench where the Genesis was hooked up to a CRT. The challenge of the day was to finish Golden Axe for a prize that I can't remember, but I ended up actually going for the challenge, and as I was doing it, someone was sitting next to me watching me do it. We talked a bit, and somehow Guitar Hero came up in the conversation. When it did, he asked me what my name was, and I told him my first name, and he said my last name without me even telling him. As it turned out, it was someone from the GH community that I knew for some time, and that person was actually XX760XX, or JP, one of the biggest guys in the community because he's actually fixing up Guitar Hero controllers and giving them mechanical switches in the frets. I ended up being the challenge right there with him watching, but like I said, I couldn't remember what the prize was. That same day, that family that gave me some of the lemonade came into the store, and I met a kid my age who was really into Sega, and for the first time ever, I played on the Dreamcast with him. My first game ever played on the platform was Power Stone, and I beat him in the first round, but then he kicked my ass on every other round. Somewhere down the line, I exchanged information with that family, and I hung out with them quite a bit. They introduced me to a lot of different retro games, and they also showed me what I was missing out with on Sega's platform. Through them, I actually met my girlfriend at one of their parties, and I've currently been dating her for 3 years. This all happened about a year and a half later, by the way. Hell, we're moving out together next year, so I can go to Full Sail University in Florida without leaving her behind. So I want to thank this family that let me, come to their house and all that stuff, and treated me like they had known me forever. They really were nice, and they still are really nice to this day. So I want to actually thank them for basically introducing me to a lot of these retro games, because they gave me motivation to kind of keep collecting a ton, and honestly, they were just great people, so I have to give them a shout out. I'm not going to say names because I don't know if they want to be mentioned in the video, but they were really nice, and if they do watch this video, they'll know who they are. Around a year later, in 2017, I started going to that other retro game store, which I got my PS2 and a bunch of other stuff years back before I started going to Game On. Tournaments were happening here, and the first tournament I ever went to with my friend was a tournament for Sonic 2. At this point, I was probably too prepared for this event because I had been playing this game for a long time at this point, constantly grinding it. The goal at the end was to make it as far as you could in the game with one other person under a time limit, and man, me and that other person named Christian dominated the competition. The other guys only got to the third zone, where me and my friend got to one of the last zones. I can't remember which one it was, but I know it was really, really far in one of the last zones to play. Time went out. We ended up winning that part, and I ended up rolling some dice. I lost my train of thought for a second. I ended up rolling some dice, and both of the times that I rolled, since I got 2 free rolls, I ended up winning an NES hat and a shirt. And I would continue to go to that retro game store for another year until it sadly shut down. And by the way, I never won any other competitions. They were just too good at video games, those people. Sonic and Guitar Hero were the only games I had over them. As stated probably a million times now, I went through a gaming hiatus. I stopped collecting and everything, and I actually didn't touch my Genesis for over 2 years during that time. It wasn't because I didn't like the console, but I started having issues with various controllers I had gotten. When I say that I got a lot of controllers, I mean a lot. The same issue always happened, and it was something with the D-pad every time. This made me give up collecting for the system for quite a long time. Somewhere in 2019, though, I had a weird urge to play something new during my hiatus, and I went to the game on that day, the Retro Game Store, and bought a Dreamcast on the spot with one of the Tomb Raider games. That game ended up controlling like fucking garbage, and I looked online to see what kind of deals I could find. As that happened, I came across a Metal Jesus video talking about the Dreamcast, and I figured that if your console had a 0 or a 1 on the back of it, it didn't have copyright protection, opposed to the ones with 2 that did. As it turned out, mine had the 1 on the back, and I had a bunch of blank CDs lying around that I burnt some ROMs onto. I played the console for some time, but it eventually just became unplayed since my hiatus was still in full effect. But by the time my hiatus was over, I jumped back into collecting during the pandemic, as stated in my last few videos, and I ended up getting 3 things only days apart from another. First, I got my fully functional PS1 for $13 with all the controllers and wires. Then I got my Super Nintendo, which ended up coming in broken, so I got a Retron 2 to replace it. Soon after, I became extremely interested in finding a Sega Saturn, and I searched for about a week until I found the perfect one. I was calling stores, I was looking all over the internet, and everyone was telling me, oh, $100, $120, and people on the internet had it for like $90, $100. But one day, I found this American Sega Saturn that was in amazing condition, and it came with everything for only $70, plus it came with a game, so that meant that I was able to get Pseudo Saturn on the console. So at this point, I decided to start collecting for the Genesis again since I was having a lot of fun with the Saturn, but unfortunately, I kept getting bad controllers, so then I jumped back on the Saturn and started playing some of the Sonic games that were actually ported over to the Saturn, because Sonic Jam was Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, so I ended up playing through the series on the Saturn rather than the Genesis. I was looking to finally complete the whole Sonic series, and I did make it through Sonic 1 and 3 on there, and right now, for a full completion, I am missing Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic CD, and whatever other knockoff kind of Sonic game that they made that weren't part of the main series. During this time, I also played through all of Sonic Adventure 2, and I made some progress on Sonic Adventure as well. By the time the summer came, I had added around 20 more Genesis games to my collection, and I really wanted a chance to play them. As I've been saying, I had problems with controllers, so I decided that it was time to get an adapter that connects my Bluetooth gamepads to the console, so like a PS4 controller or an Xbox One S controller, something along those lines. When I couldn't move left or right with those controllers, I figured out then and there that the controllers were never the problem. As it turned out, the Genesis that I had gotten so many years ago had an issue with the controller port itself where you would have to push that controller cable in there extremely tight. So I felt really stupid after I found this out because I had gone through so many different controllers, some of those being really collectible controllers as well. Luckily, this meant that there was a happy ending for my Genesis. Let's go to the present now. Where do I stand when it comes to Sega? I'm very on and off with these guys nowadays, especially when it comes to Sonic. I feel everything Sonic-wise up to Sonic 06 was pretty great. I actually enjoyed Sonic 06, don't kill me. But I feel like the rest of their main games have been extremely rushed and just not nearly at the quality that they used to be. I remember being younger and honestly returning any Wii Sonic game that I got because they just weren't as good as any other Sonic game that I had played before that. On top of that, when Sonic Forces came out, I was done with it within a few hours, and not only did I hate it, but I never touched it again. I do like the Yakuza games that Sega has been making, and I'm looking to buy Judgment soon, but honestly, I'm really at this point a classic Sonic for a classic Sega fan who isn't a big fan of their newer stuff nowadays, unfortunately. I still play my Genesis, Saturn, and Dreamcast all the time, and one of these days I am looking to finally get a Sega CD and 32X, but like I said, I'm not that big of a fan of their more modern games, but I hope that the next Sonic is going to be good, because I am extremely excited, because I'm a major Sonic fan and a major Sega fan. Anyway, guys, that's my history with Sega. You would think that I would make an Atari video next, but unfortunately, I have very little experience with anything outside of the 2600, and the video wouldn't really make any sense for me to make right now. Maybe in the next 10 years, if I have more consoles from that company, there will be a video, but for now, this has been my history with Sega. Thank you guys for watching this video, have a good one, and I will see you all in the next one.